Hello everyone, I'm TheMan, welcome to a review video. We're going to be reviewing Lost, the complete series. Actually, these are my huge stack of DVDs that I own, and yeah. So we're going to be reviewing Lost. And there will probably be spoilers. My reviews are a bit different than most reviews. I don't just go into a whole lot of detail, mostly because my memory is not good as it used to be. But I'm going to basically, how I do my reviews is explain how it made me feel, what I thought of the show, or whatever I'm reviewing, how much has impacted me, stuff like that. So this isn't your average review. This is more of basically how much that thing or whatever I'm reviewing means to me. And oh boy. Yeah. So, in case you've been living on an island and don't know what Lost is about a plane crash that crashes on this mysterious island. This island is not on any maps. No one knows of its existence except for a certain amount of people and certain special people, and yeah, it's I may not be a good job, I may not do a good job at explaining it, but trust me, it's worth it. I will probably spoil some things. I'm definitely going to talk about the ending, the notorious ending, and more. And I just got done watching the very last episode, actually. I just got done watching it, like about an hour ago. And I think this is the only show ever, I've seen a lot, that actually made me cry. And for the ones that are not new to what the show is about, I'll explain which thing made me tear up the most. I've been watching this off and on for about a few months now. I bought it on Google Play digitally, which is where I buy all my shows and movies because I don't like streaming services. And I liked the show so much that I bought the DVDs. Now, you probably saw that 3 of the DVDs looked very different compared to the others. My local library was actually selling season 1, 2, and 3. And so I just went ahead and bought them because I liked the show so much. So, yeah, that's why those DVDs look different compared to the other ones, because I got those from my local library. I bought them. I didn't borrow them. I bought them. They were selling them. So, at a local event. And I'm really glad I did. I paid like $3 for them, so. And, there's a lot to cover in the show. It's 6 seasons, and there's a lot. One of the main things, we're going to start at the beginning, as with the plane crash. So the show just sort of begins. It begins with the plane crash. The plane has already crashed. There's chaos. Everyone's freaking out. The survivors are freaking out and all that. And we get the very first person we see is Jack. He's waking up in a bamboo forest. And he hears the screaming and stuff, and he goes and sees what's going on, and he tries to help people because he's a doctor. So he saves a few people's lives, helps them out, and it goes on from there. The show kind of stays relatively the same for a few episodes, except you learn that one of the people in the group was not on the plane. And that person's name is Ethan. Ethan works for the others, as they're known as. And they sort of try and figure out who he is. And they learn that these people are not very good and that they're very dangerous. But also, later on in the show, Locke, which is my favorite character out of all the characters in the show, probably Locke, Mr. Echo, and Desmond are like my top 3 favorite characters. I thought Echo was awesome. I mean, he was such a great character. He is. And Locke and Boone, who is one of the survivors, goes and finds this hatch in the ground. Now, I didn't know what the hatch was. Of course, none of us did. And it's one of those shows that really leaves you thinking. You theorize so much. But yet, one thing I have to say about the show, it's predictable in a very good way. You'll see some things coming, no matter what. But you won't know exactly how they happen, but you kind of know what's going to happen. But there is a lot in the show that will leave you wondering, that will leave you clueless, that will surprise you. There's a lot of surprises. In fact, I think it's really well balanced when it comes to predictability and I guess unpredictability, like the unknown. There's a good balance of predicting what's going to happen to not knowing what's going to happen, and it has a good balance. At least to me, I thought it had a good balance. And we start to try and figure out who the others are. And they start to become a little really mysterious, really kind of like eerie. And by the end of season 1, they blow open the hatch and it ends. I didn't have these DVDs by the time I finished season 1. I pretty much watched at least 2 episodes a day. And I finished it. I binged it because I liked it so much. But there's one thing I forgot to mention, is the numbers. Oh yes, the mysterious numbers, which you do learn what they mean at the end. You do. Not at the very end, but final season, you learn. And were they meaningless? No. To me, they weren't. And I'm also going to sort of explain why I thought the ending was not as bad as a lot of people say, or as a lot of people think, and why it actually makes a lot of sense. So, these numbers are really mysterious because they're written on the hatch, but also they're the numbers that Hugo or Hurley, which is this real big guy. He's also one of my favorite characters because he's hilarious. He's funny. He's real cool, and he's a really really good character. I really like him, but he won the lottery using those numbers, and he was in this mental institution that one of the people that he met in the mental institution, or I think it was I think he wasn't in the mental institution. I don't think. But at least not before Hugo knew him. I don't think. I can't really remember. I think they did meet in the mental institution, but he's also repeating the numbers. He knows the numbers, and also, by the way, there's going to be a lot of me. I'm also going to explain how there's a lot I wish it did cover because there's still stuff that's being left unanswered, but there's a lot of theories. I have not read them because I avoid all spoilers for this show, and which is the best way to watch the show, trust me. And so he thinks the numbers are cursed because ever since he won the lottery, bad things started happening. His uncle died, his grandfather, I believe, died. And, just all this bad stuff happening, like people dying, his mansion catching on fire, his mother breaking her ankle. Like bad stuff keeps happening to him because he's cursed. But as the show goes on, you start to learn a little bit more of who these mysterious people are, especially in the second season. The second season is whenever you get to meet the other survivors. Not the others, the other survivors. There's a difference. These are the people that were in the tail end of the plane that crashed into the ocean, but quite a few survived. And they had the exact same encounter as the front of the more head of the plane did, which is someone not being in the crash. And I can't remember his name, but they kind of try and figure out who he is and stuff like that, and again, same thing happens. Danger. And then we start to learn who the others are around season 2, near the end at least. We get to see what's in the hatch, and that is Desmond. Jack met Desmond in the past, and whenever he has this catchphrase, which he always says brother a lot to the guys, or sister to the females. And that's how Jack knew him, because whenever he went down to the bunker into the hatch with Locke, he and Kate, I think Kate also went down there, he met Desmond again. And as the show went on, it does this really unique thing that I've never seen a show do, which is flashbacks. And I think this is the only show that does it. I feel like there's another. I want to say didn't The Walking Dead do that for a little while? Like around the early seasons of The Walking Dead, didn't it do that? I can't remember. It's been forever since I've seen The Walking Dead. That's another show I need to watch again. But you start to learn that these people I've met before. Everyone you see in the show have met in some way. and they met before the crash and stuff like that. And you go through these flashbacks, and it really helps with the pacing because it's not just the them being on the island. You get to learn who these people are, and it's a very, very creative and very well done way of doing character arc and just learning about these characters, about their past, who they are. It's mind blowing how well these flashbacks are done. It is genius, because it's probably the best way I've ever seen backstory done in any show ever. Maybe besides The Walking Dead and Breaking Bad, but mostly Lost. I don't see this done anymore, and it's really, really well done. And so you get to learn their backstories, their flashback. Each character, no matter who it is, villain or not, you learn their backstory. And they're all connected. They've all met some way. Especially Jack's father, who was flying from Sydney, which they all came from, by the way. Sorry if the way I'd say things, because I remember things in the now rather than, or as I talk, I remember things rather than I always remember things. So as I talk, I remember. And they were all flying from Sydney. And also I get ahead of myself a lot. So they all came from Sydney going to California. And Jack's father died in Sydney, Australia. And he was bringing his body back to California. But his body was not in the coffin when they found it. And I'm not going to get too ahead of myself, but let's just say that's one of the things that, no, I'm not going to spoil it yet. But as you learn that each, like pretty much almost every character had an encounter with Jack's father. And in season 2, we meet Mr. Echo and the other survivors, and they sort of have a clash, but then they start to learn who these people are, who they are, and we get to learn about their past and stuff like that. And as the show goes on, and near the end of season 2, we learn who the leader is, which I was shocked when the leader was shown. I was not expecting that person to be the leader, because he doesn't look like one. But as you go into season 3, you start to realize, yeah, he's the leader. In fact, I started to kind of question whether he is the leader of this group or not. Like, even in season 3, I'm like, no, he's just claiming to be because he's a liar. And that person is Benjamin, or Ben Linus. Probably one of my other favorite characters, because he's just very interesting, because throughout the show, he's there till the very end. Till the very end he is. And one thing that I learned and sort of thought is that, and I still kind of think this, what if Ben knew a lot more than he said he did? Because remember, he's a liar. He lies a lot. So knowing when he's telling the truth or not is very hard. And that's another thing the show gets right, is that it makes a liar, a character who lies, very, very hard to tell. Like, there's a lot in the show about him that really makes you think that maybe he really does know more than what he's saying. He's got to know more than what he's going on, that he's saying, that he says that he knows. Except for one thing, and I'll get to that soon. Now, on to season 3, they all get captive at the end of season 2. Jack, Hurley, Kate, and Sawyer. Well, actually, no. I take that back. Hurley did not get captured. I just remembered. No, he did not. It was Jake, Kate, and Sawyer. Or James. All get captured. And I'm going to go back a little bit. And I'm going to mention Michael. Michael is this character who has his son. Pretty much the only kid in the show. That sort of stays in the show. Basically, he gets kidnapped by the others. And Michael has to go after him. And, well, there's something special about his son, Walt. And, well, to be honest, Michael and Walt's story is very disappointing in the later seasons. Especially Walt's. Walt has this very unique ability that he can pretty much make himself appear anywhere at any time to anyone. And unfortunately, that never gets not only explained, but it never continues. Walt does show up later on, and honestly, he just is there. I really wish he made a comeback at the end, at the very last season. I'm sure the actor had, because he was an actual kid, I'm sure he had school things and an actual life to, that he had to do and stuff like that. But I really wish he made some sort of comeback at the end or just something, because he had this very unique ability that not only is never really explained, but it could have really mattered later on in the story, especially near the end, and he's sort of never seen or mentioned again. He's not forgotten necessarily, but I feel like he could have been very, very important. But I'm sure for personal reasons and real life reasons, why a lot of these actors never came back, and why some of their stuff is never explained. There's a lot of backstory that I wish was explained. Again, it wasn't, and we're going to get into a little bit more detail. It's going to be a long review. So on to season 3, or at the end of season 2, Walt and Michael leave the island. They just leave. And they sort of never come back. Sort of. And on to season 2, you learn more about the others. There's sort of like a feud and war going on, similar to what... Well, no, I take that back. It's not similar. It's kind of like Rick versus Negan in The Walking Dead, but it's a little less violent and a little more mysterious. But, or I should say not as violent. And you start to learn more about the others. You start to learn that you start to learn more about this people called the Dharma Initiative. I keep wanting to call it project, but it's initiative. And way later on in the show, you learn what the Dharma Initiative is. But in the earlier seasons, you start to learn that they do experiments, and they did experiments that they haven't been on the island for years, and these others sort of took over where the Dharma Initiative sort of left off. And it's really done in a really well way to, like, you wonder how long these people have been on the island. You wonder how many people have come to the island. You find out about the Black Rock, which is this pirate ship, which plays a very important role later on. But going on through season 3, you start to learn more about the others. Not really a whole lot about Ben, but more of the second survivors from the tail end of the plane. And you got through Mr. Echo and shit. Why can I not remember all their names? Oh, I cannot remember the cop chick's name. The cop. Oh, why can I not remember her name? Ana Lucia. You learn about her backstory, which there's a lot more about her that I really wish it expanded on, but it doesn't. What I find interesting is some of the deaths in the show are there's a few deaths, especially in the earlier seasons, that's very, very unsatisfying. But probably one of the most satisfying deaths in this entire show is Mr. Echo. Because he fulfilled his purpose. And let's just say that the island didn't need him anymore. And of course, we can't forget about the smoke monster. But the smoke monster will come later because, oh boy, I saw it coming. But it was still something else. But we get to learn Mr. Echo's backstory about, his life, how he got to the island, and the fact that the other plane that crashed, which they found another plane, a very old plane, and 2 people in priest clothing, one with a gun. And we learned that one of the priests in the broken plane from years ago was Mr. Echo's brother. And around the episode in the episode when Mr. Echo dies, he makes peace with his brother, and that's why his death was the most satisfying out of all of them, because he fulfilled everything. He fulfilled his purpose. The other people, not really. Some of them did, but a lot of them didn't. They were sort of spontaneous and surprise deaths. But there were a few that was like, yeah, it makes sense. So, now, to be honest, I don't remember how season 3 ends. And I'm going to say that I want to say 4 was the weakest season out of all of them. Season 3, which I kind of don't really remember a lot of, but it ended really abruptly. It didn't end with a cliffhanger. It sort of just ended. But around maybe it was season 4. Maybe that's why. God, I can't remember how season 4 ended. Give me 1 second. Okay, so my box, the big boxes of the DVDs have pictures in them. I had to look at the pictures to refresh my memory. So season 3 ended very abruptly. It sort of just ended. I didn't like the ending, and season 4 was definitely the weakest. It had probably the only bad episode ended, because I'm not going to say that the ending was bad. I'll explain why. But there was one bad episode I didn't like. And in season 4, Michael comes back. And near the sort of end of season 3, we learn that there's a boat, because someone parachuted onto the island from a helicopter. And then that's when we start to learn about time travel. This show, from the very beginning, believe it or not, is about time travel and something else that I'm not going to say just yet. But they have like these phones that can communicate with the boat, and we start to think that, oh yeah, they'll come to rescue us, when they're actually really bad people. And yeah, they're bad people. But season 4 really was not that good of a season. It had one bad episode that felt really, really forced. It felt like a filler episode, which that's pretty much the only filler episode in this entire show. The ones that are filler don't feel like filler. But this one, oh yeah. And it involves the 2 people that came from the freighter, from the boat, going to this station, this Dharma station, to stop gas from coming out of the station and poisoning everyone and killing everyone. And it just felt really, really forced. It felt really forced. And not only that, but there's some moments in the show where it'll follow a certain person's flashback, even though the episode is following this completely separate character. Like, it's more focused on this character, but it's not focusing on their flashbacks. What's going on, like, in this other person's little storyline, they're focusing on their flashback, even though the whole episode on the island is not focusing on them. It's kind of weird. There's some episodes where it's like, why are we focusing on, let's say, Sun? Let's say, why are we focusing on her backstory, even though we're more focusing on Sawyer? Like, why are we following Sawyer so much, but yet we're going through Sun's flashback? It gets kind of weird sometimes with the flashbacks, and eventually flash forwards. And that's when we get to season 4. They do leave the island, but they come back because they have a purpose: to rescue everyone that got left behind. And that's when time travel comes in. We go through time of different parts, and we get to learn about Dharma and Ben. We get to see Ben as a kid and stuff like that, and as a teen, or as more of a adult. And it's pretty interesting. It is. It's probably very interesting. Season 5 is definitely the strongest, and where the time travel sort of ends, but also is like really prominent. But season 4 definitely was not the best. There is some stuff that happens where it's like, kind of makes you wonder, where it kind of doesn't make any sense, but it just wasn't really memorable. Like, was not the best season. It's probably one of the less good, the only bad season in this entire show, with the only bad episode. But overall, season 5 definitely took it up a notch. And season 5, we get to see them being stuck in the 70s, along with the Dharma Initiative. And throughout the show, we've heard about Jacob. You know, we hear Jacob done this, Jacob asked you to do this. We get to learn Richard. Richard Albert has been on the island for years, and he never ages. We get to learn that through time travel. But also, it's kind of obvious a little bit. But we don't get to learn how he got this way until the very last season. But we get to learn more about the Dharma Initiative in season 4, and I thought they would be more of a huge presence, like they've been on the island for years and years. But in reality, they haven't. And we learn that Ben really is the last of the Dharma Initiative. And he joined in their time the others, which is basically Richard Albert and his group. And we get to learn about Charles Whitmore, who is the person that has the boat and faked the plane crash. They found the oceanic plane in a wreckage in a trench deep in the ocean, and we learn that it's fake, and it's very obviously fake. That's one of the things that I also predicted, is that that's fake. But another thing that I sort of thought and ended up being true, but I'm not going to say what that is just yet. So we go through the 70s, and they eventually get back to their own time. And when they get back to their own time and try and prevent basically everything from happening, plane crash and all, it works, but also doesn't work. And not only that, but, well, Let's talk about season 5. Or season 6, sorry. And, season 6, we learn who the smoke monster is. Locke is dead. He died when he stopped the time travel from happening and was teleported back to the mainland, was casted out by the island, and Ben killed him. Well, the only way they could go back to the island was recreate the scene. And, well, apparently the smoke monster can take a form of pretty much anyone who's dead. And he decides to take the form of John Locke. And, well, let's just say that we finally get to meet Jacob. After hearing from him for so long, we've heard his name and never got to see him. And Ben and Locke kill him. And whenever that happened, I was disappointed because I was hoping we would get to learn more. And I was afraid that the season would not share much of Jacob. That's the end. He's dead. He's never going to come back. Well, since Hurley can talk to dead people, he definitely talked to Hugo a lot and told him what to do, like he does with everyone. Because Ben never met Jacob. In fact, nobody has, except Richard. And we get to learn about Ricardo. He was on the Black Rock, the pirate ship from, I want to say, 1700s, 17 or 1800s. And he was Spanish, and he accidentally killed someone, and he was going to be hanged. But a ship from the New World, which was America at the time, decided to sort of buy him as a slave. He was on a slave ship. And he was being transported to the New World, and they got, I guess, lost. And they ended up crashing on the island. And early in the season, we got to see this foot that had 3 toes. I think it was 3 toes. It might have been 4. 4 or 3 toes. And it was part of a statue, a Anubis statue. There's a lot of Egyptian stuff, ancient Egyptian stuff going on in a lot of the ancient ruins on the island, and which sadly never gets explored. And as the show progresses, we learn that the Black Rock crashed through the statue and knocked it down and destroyed the statue. And that's why its foot is only there and Jacob lives in the foot. And we get to learn about Jacob. We get to learn about the smoke monster. How the smoke monster came to be. And I think this is where I kind of want to stop the review and just give my thoughts. Because I don't want to spoil too much. Plus, my memory is not as good as it used to be. But I want to talk about the ending. This is going to be very spoiler heavy. So at the end, Locke and Ben are going to go. Locke wants to destroy the island. Basically, he's the smoke monster. Remember, he's the smoke monster because the real Locke is dead. So Locke wants to go destroy the island and leave the island and go to the mainland which who knows what would happen then. And, well, the island doesn't get destroyed because Jacob passed on the torch to Jack, and Jack passed it on to Hurley. And I predicted this after seeing the episode where Jacob dies. And what I predicted was that whoever dies has to take his place. And I was right. And that has been going on for years and years and years and years. But there's a lot in this show that I wish got explained. And that is how many people have actually came to the island. How many people have been on the island? Did Jacob build the temple? Did he build the Anubis statue? I don't know. This stuff is never explained, and I really wish it was. Another thing that really saddens me, and it's even mentioned in the show, is why does Libby never talk to Hugo? Ever. Why? Everyone else talked to him after they died. Everyone. But not Libby. Now there are a few people that never came to Hugo and talked to him, but Libby never came to him and talked to him. And her backstory, Hugo thought she's seen her from somewhere. And we learn at the end of the episode where Hugo wants to jump off a cliff that she was in the mental institution. Same one as Hugo. And we never get closure to that. He never learns that she was in the mental institution. He never learns it. And that's what upsets me, is that never got closure. And we never get to learn how many people have actually been on that island. Was that statue always there? Did Jacob build it? Did he build the temple? I wish I knew these things. I wish there was backstory to these things. But sadly, it just never explains. It never gets explained. We get to learn Jacob's backstory, his childhood, that he was born on the island, that he became immortal, that he could never age, and he had a brother who got turned into the smoke monster, which I don't think that's really him. I think the smoke monster really is a separate entity. I do think he really was human at one point, and maybe was cursed and was sealed away. But again, that's never really explained. But I definitely do not think that, in fact, it's even confirmed that the smoke monster really is not Jacob's brother, because the two skeletons that are found at the first season were his non-biological mother and his brother. And again, I really wish we knew how many people were on that island before, and how many people have come to that island throughout the years. Who were the very first people on that island? Who were the very first people ever to discover the island? It was someone ancient, that's for sure, but I don't know. I don't know who. I don't know if it's the Egyptians, the Mayans, the Aztecs. I don't know. But I wish we did. But the ending made a lot of sense. It did. And believe it or not, it was very obvious from the very beginning of the series. The very start. And that is that they're all dead. Now I see why some people may be upset about the ending. But I'm going to sort of give my theories on it. A part of me does think that they were all dead in the plane crash. That they really did die in the plane crash. But another part of me kind of wonders, did they all die when they blew up the hatch with the nuclear core? But there's a lot of contradictions. There's a lot of contradictions to a lot of this stuff. But the ending makes sense because that's what this whole show is about. From the very beginning. I know some people may say that the show sort of lost what it was supposed to be from like this certain season, like season 4, or that it sort of didn't know what it wanted to be, and I can kind of see that, but I do think in the end the island is purgatory. The smoke monster is I wouldn't say it's a demon. It's not. It's definitely something old and ancient, for sure. In fact, that's also confirmed in season 5, when Ben goes into the temple with Locke, and is to be judged to see if he would be let to live, and it shows a hieroglyph of Anubis sort of blowing smoke out of its hand, and you see the smoke monster. But what's really weird, and now that I think about it, there was a gif of the smoke monster with red eyes, and it sort of had like the dog head, and it was roaring like into the sky. I saw either a picture or a gif, but that never shows up in the show. That scene never happens. I've never seen it. In fact, let me see if I can go look that up. I couldn't find it. So I think if maybe it was fan art, but I don't know. But going through all the flashbacks in the final episode really made me tear up. I thought the one where, because they're all sort of remembering who they were, because it was showing sort of like a what if scenario, like what if they never crashed, and they were sort of remembering another life. And I thought that Sun and Jin remembering would really break me. But the one that broke me the most was my memory's failing me again. Probably because I'm tired. It's when, oh God, why am I failing? Hold on. Claire, I don't know why I could not remember that. I'm really sorry about my memory. But it's when Claire remembered. That's the one that broke me the most. God damn. This made me tear up again. That's the one that broke me the most. I don't know why, but That's the one that broke me. I've seen so many shows. So many shows. This is the only show out of all of them I've seen. Walking Dead, Breaking Bad, Sons of Anarchy, even though I never finished it. Of course, I never finished Walking Dead either. I stopped at like season 10. Or halfway through 11, I think. That's whenever I stopped. But this show is the only show that really made me care about the characters. The only show ever to really, really make me cry. And that's a hard thing to do in any show or movie. I am hard as a fucking rock. But seeing Claire remember, that shit broke me, man. That shit broke me. It's the ending basically confirms that they were all dead. And pretty obvious from the very beginning of the show, and I can kind of see why people didn't like the ending, but for me, it made a lot of sense. It didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel like this has to end. There has to be a closure, because to me, there really was no closure. Like, there's still a lot of stuff that isn't explained, like I said. I don't know what happened to the other people that didn't show up in the end. I think that they did move on. But another thing that I also think, and I'm sure this is probably a popular theory, is that the ending was the last thing that Jack was thinking about before he died. I think that is I think a lot of the what if was more of in Jack's mind, especially right at the end. Right, because I think that really was the last thing that he was thinking about right before he died. And it ends where it began. But I'm sure a lot of people will say, like, oh, but what happened to Hugo and Ben and Desmond? What happened to the people that left the island? If you think about it, Hugo and Ben sort of became partners in the end. And they said to each other, Hugo said to Ben, you were a good number 2. Were, not are, were. And Ben replied with, you were a good number 1. Were, not are, were. So I think they may have died. I think maybe that was a flash way forward. I don't know. I do think the last few moments was in Jack's head and the rest were really a what if. But I don't know. I don't think any of us will really know. And I wish there was some sort of like prequel and sequel to Lost. But I don't think it will ever happen. Mostly because the show has unfortunately and very strangely been forgotten. Nobody talks about this show anymore. which is weird because this show was extremely popular back then, but sadly it's not anymore, and I wish it was, but it isn't. But I know my memory is bad. I know it was all over the place. But for the ones that have stuck for this hour long, close to an hour long review, I want to tell everyone that even though I spoiled a lot, but if you skip to the very end for final thoughts or whatever, I want you to binge watch this show from the very start to the very end. And I want you to pay very close attention to every single thing that happens and is said in the show. And then it may make sense, whether you have already seen the show and haven't seen it in 10 years, or you are finding the show for the very first time like me. It's worth it. It is worth... Actually, it's been 20 years, hasn't it? Shit. I'm old. But I hope you binge watch this. Let this be the next thing you binge watch. And because it is worth it. This show I will never forget. Out of all the shows I've watched, this, hands down, without a doubt, is the greatest show I have ever seen in my entire 24 years of life. This video will stick with me forever. I will watch it in another couple of years. I will watch it hopefully with someone special. Someone who hasn't seen the show or hasn't seen it in a very long time. And experience it all over again. This show will never leave me. This show is so special to me and so inspirational to me that I've literally had dreams about this show. I've had dreams about it. And this show will forever be special. It will forever be special to me. And I wish it wasn't so forgotten because it is something that TV isn't anymore. And still to this day, it is an extremely unique concept. This show will stay with me until the day that I wake up on that island.